Hi, Gina. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? I think I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Very good. I'm waiting on Blahana. There's no sign of her yet, so I'm not sure if she's
Okay.
come or what, but definitely don't want to let it go to waste anyway, because there'd be loads of kids that would love to see this. Uh, so I don't know if you want to wait a few seconds and see if she comes.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Good, good. Thanks so much for making the time to do this as well. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited, so I really hope they come.
Me too.
um, yeah, no, I love doing outreach stuff like this, so this was perfect. I was like, I'm 100% going to do this. I sent it to a few of my other fellow grad students, so they may jump on this bandwagon.
Oh,
But,
that's fab. That's brilliant. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity when everyone's in lockdown to reach out to people and just
yeah,
because everyone's so curious about what actually marine biologists do, so
right.
we're a conservation group that's filled with marine scientists, basically graduates, and we conduct research on marine megafauna, so cetaceans, whales, dolphins and porpoises, elasmobirds, sharks, skates and rays, and pinnipeds. So we have a citizen science app called the Observers app, and it's free to download, and people can contribute through that.
Is that your app?
Yeah, that's our app. Yeah, the Observers app.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. And we also do dedicated monitoring on boats as well. So at the moment, things are kind of at a halt because the coronavirus. So
Yeah.
it's a shame.
Yeah, it is. I just started my master's program, so now I'm on hold with getting my project started, even though it's not slated till the summertime anyways, but just the whole developing and like being in classes again. So
Yeah.
definitely at a halt, but I'm so excited for this. I really am.
So I'm just worried about time because we have a limited time on Zoom. So I'm thinking, is there any way that you could just present, and it will still be super beneficial for outreach for loads of people?
Yeah, that's fine. I did gear my presentation towards the younger crowd, but I'm sure
Great.
that's also probably fine.
Yeah.
I did have some interactive elements, so if you want to participate.
Yeah, I'd be happy to participate. That would be great. Oh my God, if I get things right now, or I'll be really embarrassed.
Well, it would be a time for both of us. I haven't done anything related to phytoplankton in a while, but I have done it, so definitely is a fun time. Mostly what I have been doing with it more recently has been a little more college level with looking at spatial patterns and stuff like that, which that would have been slightly difficult to portray to someone of a younger audience. So I shifted the kind of gear, I think we corresponded over email. So I kind of shifted towards the food web and stuff like that, and how it's beneficial and stuff like that. So, but I did incorporate interactive things because I don't know, I feel like that's important as giving a presentation to an audience.
Yeah, great. I'm so sorry that it worked out. I don't know where our ties got crossed here, but we have loads of people watching these things, so this Meet a Marine Biologist program that we have, it's definitely going to be of benefit to some kid out there anyway. So if you want to share your screen, just at the bottom it says share screen button.
Let's see.
Thank you so much.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, well, do I need to introduce myself? I don't know. This is
no, it just worked well. This is Gina.
Hi guys, I'm Gina. I'm located in New Orleans, Louisiana currently, and I am a marine biologist, or at least I'm aspiring to be. Currently going through my master's program to get further my education so I can become a research professor. So I'm going to talk to you today about some phytoplankton and why they're super important, even though they're super, super tiny, and you probably don't think about them unless you've actually heard about them. So welcome to the world of the tiny phytoplankton and their big impact. So what are phytoplankton? So they are tiny aquatic plants that can be found basically in every type of water body, whether it be freshwater or saltwater. and you can't typically see them unless they're under a microscope, unless you're looking at macroalgae, which is typically your seaweeds. But otherwise, you can only see them unless you're looking at a microscope. I'm going to ask you a question now. So over here on my little diagram, I do have pictures of what phytoplankton look like. But if you were to take a spoonful of water, how many phytoplankton do you think you would see?
3 million.
3 million? That's a pretty good guess. It could be anywhere from thousands of them to in the millions. So they are super important, but you can only see them under the microscope. Do you guys have SpongeBob SquarePants?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so I have Sheldon down there in the corner because he actually is a plankton. So he is in SpongeBob, but he is a phytoplankton, which is super exciting. So I figured I'd incorporate him in there for you.
Great.
So phytoplankton, yes, are super important. I'm going to tell you why. So I have another question for you. Do you know why trees are important?
Yeah, because of carbon sequestration. This is bad for me. Like, I know the answer.
No, you're on the right track. So yes, so trees take in carbon dioxide, and ultimately they produce oxygen that we can breathe. So that is only one of the many aspects as to why trees are important. But that's the main one we're going to focus on to lead into why phytoplankton are super important. So phytoplankton actually does the same thing. So they sequester carbon as well, and they release oxygen. And they actually produce 50% of the oxygen that we breathe. So aside from plants, phytoplankton are super important because they give us all this oxygen. And you wouldn't think about it because you can't see it unless you're looking under a microscope. So we have 5 different groups of phytoplankton. So we have cyanobacteria, diatoms, dinoflagellates, or dinoflagellates, depending on how you pronounce it, green algae, and coccolithophores. Phytoplankton require sunlight in order to grow and photosynthesize, which is how they sequester carbon and release oxygen for us. But they're also known as primary producers. Do you know what a primary producer is?
Yeah, primary producer is the bottom of the food chain. So they take in oxygen and they, I don't know, I'm messing this up because I'm nervous. Yeah, a primary producer, they take in oxygen and they grow from that. They photosynthesize and they grow from that. That's my answer.
So they take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen, but what makes them primary producers is they're the bottom of the food chain, since they're able to take in that abiotic factor of sunlight and turn it into energy.
Yeah.
So here's just some pictures of what it would look like if you were to take that spoonful that I asked you about earlier. So these are all the different types of phytoplankton as well as some zooplankton you got going on in here. So if you were to take your spoonful and look at this under a microscope, this is very much what you would see. Amongst some of the other things you might also see are microplastics. If you're unsure what those are just degraded plastics that have gotten into our waterways, which is a whole nother type of problem that we have. But you would potentially be able to see those under a microscope as well. But this is basically what you would see. So I just wanted to show you 4 different types of phytoplankton that I have seen under microscopes. My apologies for my pronunciation of these, but we're going to try our best.
No problem.
So up here in the top left, you have Thalassiosira, which is a phytoplankton species. So if you look closely, there's these little tiny threads that look like they're connecting them. So a lot of these phytoplankton do have that, and that's how they're able to kind of stay joined together. Over on the top right, we have Asteriolnellopsis. And then the bottom left, we have Didylum, and then Asterionella on the bottom right. So as you can see, they come in a variety of different types of shapes, and there's tons and tons of more of these things. When you look at it under a microscope, you could see probably at least 20 different species at any given time. So since I told you phytoplankton requires sunlight, where do you think phytoplankton would be found in this ocean profile? Would you see it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, depending on how much sunlight the sun penetrates into the ocean?
They'd be found in the photic zone in the surface waters.
Okay. So as you get deeper and deeper, the sunlight can't penetrate the depths. So we would expect them to see it in where number 1 is, where number 2 is, and potentially number 3. So phytoplankton go through this diurnal cycle where they kind of move throughout the water column during the day and night, but that's complicated, so we're not going to get too far into that. But this is where you would most likely find phytoplankton. So besides providing oxygen, phytoplankton is a super important food source. So do you know what a food web is?
Yeah. A food web is multiple food chains combined that create the whole entire ecosystem.
Good. So here's a brief little food web, or in this case, little food chain that we got going on. So we're going to start with our sunlight. So as I said before, our phytoplankton are photosynthetic, so they're taking in the sunlight and turning it into energy to produce oxygen. So our sunlight then gets fed to our phytoplankton, which is right there. So then we have, which are super small. So then we have slightly bigger. So then we have zooplankton, which are very similar to phytoplankton, that they're very, very small, and you'd have to see them under a microscope. Except these are little animals, and they could particularly be larvae of different types of species, such as crabs. So our zooplankton will feed on our phytoplankton, which then our small fish get to feed on the zooplankton. And then we have our large fish get to feed on our small fish. And then eventually we have our medium predators, such as seals, and then our killer whales will go ahead and eat our seals, creating this whole giant food web within our ecosystem. So besides having benefits, phytoplankton can actually sometimes be harmful. So I'm going to go through just a few of their defenses that they might have. So like I said, phytoplankton can sometimes be harmful. So there's two ways in which phytoplankton can be harmful to our environment. So the first one is through harmful algal blooms that produce toxins. So do you know what a toxin is?
A substance that can harm bodily tissues.
That's good enough for me. So yeah, so they produce this type of toxin that can be harmful for humans, fish, other types of organisms living in the water bodies, and if it's consumed, it can be potentially harmful. So then our second type of harmful phytoplankton is that they're not necessarily harmful, but when they create these massive blooms, it actually can block out the light from getting to plants below. And it can also potentially clog fish gills because they're breathing in all this water. So quick note about harmful algal blooms. So it's phytoplankton that produce toxins that can be harmful to animals and humans. So these harmful algal blooms, they grow out of control due to an increase of nutrients, which those nutrients typically come from river runoff or stream runoff, and it's mostly caused by too much fertilizer being applied to lawns and different types of gardens. So all those extra nutrients that are put in the fertilizer, then when it rains, gets brushed off into the river, which then that river then will empty out into the ocean. So, but these harmful algal blooms, they can occur both in saltwater and freshwater, and it's been a major problem, and it's getting increasingly more so. So yeah, so harmful algal blooms are increasing worldwide and yearly, and so it's starting to become a problem. So that's our harmful algal bloom. So for this slide, I want you to look at the left side, which is your normal side, and the right side, which is algal bloom that you see. So sometimes, like I said, the algae blooms can sometimes block the sunlight, so plants are unable to survive at the bottom. So that can include happening in rivers, lakes, ponds, and intertidal zones. So that could be affecting different types of plants, such as seaweed even, or some sort of submerged aquatic vegetation, such as seagrasses and stuff. So that leads me, I want to tell you a little bit about water quality and why it's important. So water quality is just the monitoring of making sure that the water bodies that we inhibit and interact with are clean and unpolluted. So basically everything relies on water, as I'm sure you're aware. The type of quality of our water determines what it's used for. So if you look at seawater, we don't drink that because it's salt water, but it has multiple other uses such as boating and recreation as well as fishing. But we still want to be able to make sure that that water is of the highest quality that we can get it by keeping it clean and unpolluted. So like I said, we want to be able to use our water sources to the fullest extent while keeping it clean. So I know over here in the States, we have some groups that participate in citizen science. So you might be able to get involved. There's a lot of places over in my area where you're able to go out and collect some water samples from, say, your backyard ponds and go get it tested to see the water quality of your pond and see how it's doing. So that's something you might want to look into.
Yeah, definitely. I know that the Environmental Protection Agency in Ireland, the EPA, they look after water quality here. So they might have some kind of scheme like that. I must look into it.
Yep. Yeah, so it's super fun, super easy, and it's, I don't know, if you're a younger kid, it's fun to get involved early as you can. So I've talked about a few of the harmful ways that phytoplankton can be bad, but they actually have some pretty cool defense mechanisms which aren't harmful. So some phytoplankton have bioluminescence, so that means they glow. And they typically do this to deter other predators. And so besides phytoplankton having bioluminescence, a lot of deep sea creatures tend to have it, like jellyfish. And they use it to either deter predators, or sometimes it can even attract predators. That way they can get prey. So phytoplankton also help coral reefs. So there's this type of phytoplankton called zooxanthellae, which is a type of algae that lives within the coral tissue. So they have a mutualistic relationship with the coral. So the algae gets protection by living in the structures of the coral, and the coral will receive oxygen and nutrients that's produced by the algae. So it's a win-win situation. Algae is also what gives a coral reef its beautiful colors. Have you ever been snorkeling or diving?
I don't dive myself, no, but I have been lucky enough to see short-beak common dolphins in bioluminescence off West Cork, to go back a bit, but yeah, I'm not a diver myself, not yet.
That's cool. Highly recommend. One of the greatest experiences I've ever done. My first ever dive, it was just mesmerizing. I couldn't believe I was actually doing it, and the noises I was hearing underwater was just absolutely beautiful. If I could, I would live underwater forever, but not possible. Anyways, but yeah, so phytoplankton is super important, especially to coral reefs. There's something called coral bleaching, which that means that's the coral's getting stressed out, and they actually will release the zooxanthellae phytoplankton, and then that's when you start to see the coral lose its color, and you'll typically see it as a white structure. So we want to make sure we can try to keep our water clean enough so we can keep these coral reefs alive. So phytoplankton are super important, and I hope you enjoyed learning all about them. Do you have any questions, whether about phytoplankton or the ocean?
No. Sorry.
That is okay.
Yeah, that was really interesting. Thank you so much, Gina. I think that kids are going to get a lot from that, because many people won't realize what actually is phytoplankton and how important it is. So I think that's really, really great. That was really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thanks for interacting.
Oh my God.
I didn't realize it's lots of interacting.
Yeah, I tried my best anyway. I'm a marine mammal ecologist, so I wouldn't focus too much on phytoplankton, but at the same time, it is obviously really important because
you did great. You did great.
Oh my God.
It definitely is super important.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
You did great.
And I'll send you an email and we'll chat soon.
Okay, no problem. It was lovely doing this.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mill. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.